At this point, it should be no secret to those who are familiar with my channel that I'm head over heels for Marvel's Avengers. However, contrary to what some might think, I don't believe that this game is perfect. In fact, there are a number of changes that I'd like to see made to the game that I think would improve its overall quality. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk about the criticisms that I have of this game, and how I think these can be improved in the future to make a better overall experience.
Stars and Stripes!
Hello and welcome to another Carrot Scraps video, and by another I mean the 57th. So while I was really trying to write down my list of criticisms about this game, I realized something that was interesting. Most of my criticisms were critical of the same two details, and that realization changed how I approached this video. So I thought I'd highlight that detail up front before we get into my list. The two details that kept showing up in my criticisms of the game were variety and aesthetic. And I think more specifically, I think my issues with the game are with its variety in gameplay and its variety in aesthetic. I actually like the aesthetic that we have in the game, I just wish there was more to look at. Anyway, with that in mind, let's move on to my list. Now, this list was written in order of importance to me. I really tried to order my criticisms in terms of which details I'd want to be fixed first before others, to really give a priority to my problems with the game. And so, with that in mind, the greatest shortcoming of Marvel's Avengers that I think should be addressed first and foremost is mission variety. If you've watched my review of the game or any of my streams, you know that combat is my favorite thing about Marvel's Avengers. I think the combat is amazing, and I think that it's the central focus of the game. And though the post-game grind can get a little bit repetitive, I think the variety between characters helps stave off boredom. That being said, there are only a limited number of sandboxes for you to explore that combat in. The missions that exist in the game already are simple. I don't think that they're bad, I just think that the qualities that make them unique are too few. I'm working on a video now where I give suggestions on missions that I'd like to see in the game. But even beyond my mission suggestions, I feel like there are very simple, basic missions that they could add to the game that haven't been added for some reason. A tower defense mission could be really interesting, or a reworked capture the flag style mission could be really fun. I'd also like to see more missions that include interesting platforming traversal or puzzles. A lot of the times you're just running on a flat surface from point A to point B, and it'd be cool to be encouraged to platform more frequently. And I don't care if it's realistic implementation. Like, the bounce pads in the game are really cool, and I would like to see more ideas like that that don't necessarily make sense, but are really fun for a video game. I'd also like to see enemies attack me in more interesting settings that force me to think about the environment or how I battle. And something else that would be cool is seeing more missions that cater to specific hero abilities. Not in a way that discourages you from playing as certain characters, but instead in a way that makes you feel like the world is responding to you depending on who you play as. We need more interesting objectives and game modes. And to do that, we need people to think outside the box a little bit. This doesn't require new assets, in my opinion. Look at what people have been doing in Gary's mod for years. Fans and programmers who just take a bunch of assets and make something new. You can make a game out of anything. Though I'd like to see big and new ideas, I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel when adding new missions to the game. You just need variety. That's about all I'll say for mission variety for now. Like I said, I'll probably talk more about this in the future, but I think this is the greatest shortcoming of the game currently. The combat is fantastic, I just need more things to do with that combat. But that being said, I would also like to see a new feature added to the game in the future. A feature that I've been seeing in a lot of other recent AAA games that I noticed is missing from Avengers. And that feature is the ability to stop Kyle from coming into my room when I'm trying to play Avengers in the middle of the night and he wants to use my PS4, but I don't have a lock on my door, so I can't keep him out. And I want my own privacy because I'm trying to stream, and I'm not talking to you, leave. The second most important thing that I think the game needs is additional supervillains. Before launch, when I saw trailers with Taskmaster and Abomination, I got really excited at the possibilities of who else we could see in the full game. Unfortunately, what I didn't know is that these were going to be the only two antagonists. Excluding MODOK and the best character in any video game ever, Monica Rappaccini, there are only two villains to tangle with in the main campaign and the post-game. Now here's the thing, Abomination and Taskmaster are honestly really simple boss battles. When it comes to gameplay, I prefer the Warbot and Warship. In my opinion, they're more superior when it comes to how you engage with them and how you defeat them as a player. But that being said, this is a superhero game. Part of the appeal is visual aesthetic and flair, not to mention brand recognition for that matter. So even though I don't think Abomination or Taskmaster fights are that interesting, the idea that you're fighting a classic Marvel villain is way more appealing than a faceless robot. Now, don't get me wrong, adjusting the gameplay of Taskmaster and Abomination is something that I'm very open to and something that I would really like to see in the future. If we can't have the current villains reworked, I'd like to see future supervillains have a little bit more complicated fight sequences. I mean, these are essentially boss battles, right? I'd like to see complicated fights that force you to think, or target weak points, or change the way you play depending on how they're acting. Currently, players are just encouraged to dogpile on one giant, very tall character. This is why I make the comparison to the Warbot and the Warship. Even though I aesthetically prefer the Taskmaster and Abomination, it's a way more interesting fight when you're targeting specific weak points on this enemy, and when you have to dodge the Warbot when it slams itself back down, or the shield generators that protect specific weak points on the Warship. Another thing I love about the Warbot and Warship boss battles, in contrast to the supervillain boss battles, is the fact that they encourage your team to split up and take on different tasks. It feels like your team can really focus its power in a lot of different directions, whereas with the supervillains, you're all in the exact same place, and a lot of the times being attacked by the exact same thing. To get this effect with the supervillains in the future, you could change the way that these villains fight, or you could even have the environment assist in making the team feel like they need to split up. These are changes I would really love to see added to the supervillain boss battles in the future. I really love the gameplay of the Warbot and Warship boss battles, and I just wish that the design philosophy of those boss battles stretched over to the supervillain boss battles. But even with all of that being said, before we get the gameplay of supervillains reworked, I still want more supervillains in the game first. And I know that sounds shallow, but let's just say we replace Taskmaster and Abomination with a tall guy named Joey and a burly guy named Maxine. You're not gonna care about fighting them as much. It's exciting to see a guy with a skull for a face and a big... I'm not a lizard. He looks like a lizard, but he's not a lizard. And a big creature with thorns sticking out of the back of his neck. There's a reason why Stan Lee and Steve Ditko created Spider-Man together. If it wasn't for that visual aesthetic, the character wouldn't have caught on the way that he did. It may sound shallow, but it really does make the difference. Now, I want to be very clear, it doesn't have to be one without the other. I just want to illustrate the point that aesthetics are really important when it comes to the superhero genre. So I'd like to see more supervillains as soon as possible. But after we get those additional supervillains, I'd like to see more complicated boss fights with them. But moving on, one of my bigger problems with Marvel's Avengers is that one of the Avengers isn't as buff as I'd like him to be. You see, in the comics, Thor has big muscles, and in Avengers, Thor doesn't have big muscles. And in response, I'm starting a GoFundMe every day until Crystal Dynamics adds more muscles into Thor of the Avengers game. Each GoFundMe will be roughly $27, and until I get what I want, I'm going to be paid a lot of money. This is something that seems small, but actually is small in comparison to how big his muscles could be. And, whatever, let's move on to the next point. The third criticism I have about the game is enemy variety. The main enemy in Marvel's Avengers is AIM, mostly characterized by fighting robots. Now, honestly, I have no problem with fighting robots. Again, I could do a whole video on this, and maybe I intend to. Robotic enemies really don't bother me that much, but variety is really what's important here. For a game that's meant to be played daily, weekly, and repetitively, it would just be nice to use this great combat system on a wide range of enemies, instead of enemies that tend to blur together. And when it comes to an intellectual property like Avengers, expectations are really going to get out of hand no matter what. You're dealing with Marvel Comics, and a player's imagination is going to get ahead of themselves. I mean, this is over 50 years of continuity. There's a whole roster of enemy types that you could add to the game, both aesthetically, like I mentioned with supervillains, and mechanically. A short list of enemy additions are the enemies of Asgard, the ninjas of Shadowland, vampires, and the Kree. You could even get really crazy and create Hulk enemy types, maybe civilians who are affected by a temporary Hulk virus. I don't know, I'm just throwing ideas out here. Again, I probably say this in every video, comics are dumb. That is the fun of comic books. That fact opens the door for creativity. No, wait, never mind. It doesn't open the door for creativity. It literally removes the door off of its hinges. It's like that scene from the Freaky Friday remake where Laurie Strode removes Lindsay Lohan's door, and I gotta stay focused. I can't talk about Freaky Friday. I just got to keep it on the main objective here. I'd really love to see the development team get a little crazy with enemy types. I personally don't mind fighting waves of robots. But that being said, just because I'm content doesn't mean that I wouldn't like to see new things added to the game. And I think enemy variety would really make the game pop.
What? Move on to the next section. I don't have a joke for the end of every segment. Please move on to the next chapter. I don't know what's going on here.
New locations fall into the same general category that the previous couple of criticisms have. At the end of the day, the game needs variety, aesthetic variety. Now, I think the locations in this game look great. Though you're generally asked to just run through these locations, I think when you slow down and take the time to examine the smaller details, these locations are very gorgeous. That being said, I'm at the point now where I avoid certain missions because I don't like looking at the same scenery. There's a specific New York mission that I've stopped playing altogether because I don't like looking at that backdrop over and over. It's strange and almost feels petty talking about aesthetics so much in this video, but it really is important when talking about variety. Again, this just takes a little bit of thinking outside the box. We could have a mission that's in the interior of a mall, we could have a mission that's at a construction site, or even a mission that's on top of the helicarrier. Those are just simple suggestions, but then there are bigger locations like the fictional Marvel backdrops, stuff like Wakanda, Asgard, or even the Negative Zone. Again, I know this sounds petty, but I think this would really help with the longevity of playtime. Which reminds me, something that I have a really big problem with in the game that I see a lot of people overlooking is the shoe size of Thor Odin's son. If you actually take the time to go into photo mode and look at Thor's feet, you'll notice that Thor actually doesn't have a very big feet. But if you look at the source material and really analyze the analytics, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly and frequently that the original Thor comic book has actually a big feet when comparatively to the video game. This is one of the bigger problems with the game that I've seen a lot of people neglecting. And if you don't acknowledge this huge problem, I'm going to try and make an attempt to make my own feet larger by just adding socks to one foot until I cut off the circulation to the rest of my leg. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this criticism in the final video, since there's a chance we're getting this feature on March 18th, but just in case we don't, I wanted to mention it here really quickly. The ability to replay the campaign not being in the game is super lame. Now, I understand why it's not able to be replayed. Like other live service games I've played, your character's progression is continuous. I can't replay the main story of Fallout 76 unless I start a new character. Avengers is made the same way. It wants you to continuously play and to continuously upgrade. That being said, the campaign was a lot of fun, and I'd like the ability to play it again, even if I have to start a new character to do so. It's especially bad when the marketing around the game is still talking about the main campaign. I loved the campaign, but most players finished it back in September, so it's a little weird to be advertised using the campaign still. But again, it seems like we're getting this soon, and the sooner the better.
I was kidding about the circulation thing. Please don't put too many socks on. It might be dangerous. I don't endorse that kind of behavior.
One of the final additions I'd like to see added to the game is crossplay. As I've said many times on this channel, I'm not a developer, and I'm not pretending to understand how game development works. There's a potential that crossplay is really difficult or incredibly expensive. But when it comes to live service games, I feel like crossplay is a necessity for the longevity of the community and the game itself. It's hard not to look at other games like Fortnite or Rocket League and wonder why Avengers doesn't get the same treatment. Plain and simple, for an online game like this, having communities separated by different consoles only discourages cooperative play. The way I see it is the easier it is for people to connect with strangers and friends, the longer people will play online, and the more the community will grow.
Did I mention his muscles yet? He has big muscles in the game, but in the comics he has little muscles. This is something that I'm actually very frightened of, and that I'd like to see monitored more quick. Oh wait, no, he has. Which one did I say? He has.
The last criticism on my list is bugs and glitches. Now, as I've mentioned before, I personally didn't have many experiences with bugs while playing the main campaign, and that generally bugs don't bother me in video games. Now, that is still completely true. Bottom line, even if game-breaking bugs didn't bother me personally, they hinder the enjoyment of the game for a lot of people. There's no shortage of players recounting their experience or visual evidence of bugs. If the team isn't already doing this, they should try and force themselves to take a real look at these documented problems with the game. Watch the issues that people are going through and really think about how they can fix this or what exactly went wrong. I personally think that games have gotten more complicated over the years, and that the majority of modern games are released with a handful of bugs. But that being said, just because there probably will be bugs in a game doesn't mean that there should be bugs in the final product. And I think that you should be trying as hard as you can to remove them, especially if you're developing a live service game. So that's my list. It's really interesting to me that when I sat down and started reading my list of criticisms, that a lot of them came down to variety and aesthetic. Now, I definitely have more criticisms, but in this video I wanted to focus on problems that I thought had potential solutions in the near future. For example, I intentionally didn't want to talk about the gear system in the game or the microtransaction shop. Now, I definitely have criticisms of the skins that are available for sale in the game, but I didn't want to talk about it in depth because I don't think that's one of the core problems with Avengers. The gear system, on the other hand, is a little bit different because I actually don't have a problem with loot in Marvel's Avengers, and I fully accept that that's potentially because I don't have enough experience when it comes to looter shooters or looter brawlers. This is honestly like my second dive into a game like this. The only reason I brought up these two details at the end of this video is because I know that these are really big criticisms for a lot of people, and I wanted to mention why they are missing from my video. I absolutely love this game, and the longer I play it, the more I become certain that it might be one of my favorite video games ever made. Everything I mentioned in this video are things that I do want to see added to the game, but at the end of the day, I like the product that was given to me, even with its flaws. But just because I accept these flaws doesn't mean that I'm ignorant to them. And so I thought it was important to voice what I think could be improved on in the future. It's great to see the development team working on new content, but I'd also like to see them fix existing content and really get creative and reimagine the content we already have in the game. There's a great core to this game, and I think you can go in a lot of different directions. I think you just need imagination and drive, and I'm pretty sure the development team has that. I just don't want them to be afraid to embrace it. Don't be afraid to do crazy things and to take chances. In the end, those weird ideas and big chances could be the ideas that the game really needs to shine. But most importantly, I really want the development team to take the comic books more seriously and give more faithful adaptations of the source material. For example, I was doing some research, and did you know that Thor was originally supposed to be a woman in the comics? But for some strange reason, they changed her into a guy with a beard in the full game? This is just pure ignorance of the source material, and it's something that I'd like to see changed in the future. Tisk, tisk, tisk is what I say, and I'm not going to stop saying it. So yeah, that's really important to me. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Did you agree with my criticisms at all? Did I leave something out that was really important to you? I want to do a video in the future where I talk about other players' criticisms of the game, so I'd love to hear your comments and criticisms on Marvel's Avengers in the comments below. But if for some reason you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel for more. If you want to watch me play Avengers and other video games live, check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/carrotscraps, and all my other social media, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, is at carrotscraps as well. Thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Popeyes is my favorite fast food establishment, and though I'd like 5 pieces of chicken, I could also palate 8. In today's video, in today's order, I'd like to... What is excessive is my question. Why do I talk like that? I don't talk like that in real life. Why does it happen in the videos? Though I don't talk like that in real life, I do talk like that in my videos, and so I'm really curious as to why that is, and maybe today, I think it's my reading voice.